There is a silence deep within us, a quiet voice that whispers when the world goes still. It does not speak in fear or in anger. It speaks in truth. For most of our lives, we run, not from danger, but from ourselves, from our wounds, from our shadows, from the parts we were told not to show. We wear masks, perform roles, and call it life. But beneath the performance, something ancient stirs. A longing not just to survive, but to awaken. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And so we live, ruled by unseen fears, inherited patterns, and forgotten dreams. But there is another way, a path of awakening, a path of becoming. This is not a path for the faint of heart. It begins not with action, but with honesty, with the courage to look in the mirror and truly see. As the poet Rumi wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." So let us begin, not by hiding from our pain, but by walking through it, hand in hand with truth. This is your journey, not to become someone else, but to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Fear is ancient. It lives in our bones. It has been with us since the first heartbeat echoed in the silence of creation. Its original purpose was noble, to protect, to preserve, to alert us to danger. In the wild, fear was the whisper that saved us from the predator in the shadows. It was the tension in our muscles, the stillness in our breath, the rush of blood that signaled, "Survive." But in our modern world, the nature of fear has changed. The tigers now wear suits, the predators hide in boardrooms, in institutions, and sometimes in our own minds. The alarms still sound, but the threats are now more subtle. Rejection, failure, loneliness, shame, fear has become internalized. It is no longer just a signal, it is a prison. The mystics have always known this. From the Buddha to Jesus, from Rumi to Ramana Maharshi, they taught us that liberation is not found in the world, but in the self. And that to be free, we must walk through our fears, not around them. Fear feeds on silence. It thrives in the shadows. But when we name it, when we meet it with awareness, something miraculous begins to happen. It dissolves. Carl Jung wrote, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. To run from fear is to give it power. To face it is to reclaim your own." We must learn to see fear not as the enemy, but as the gatekeeper. Behind every fear lies something sacred, a truth about who we are and who we are becoming. The psychologist Abraham Maslow spoke of a hierarchy of needs. At its base, survival. At its peak, self-actualization. And between the two, the great climb. The path that leads us from safety to freedom, from conformity to authenticity. But fear is the fog on that path. It obscures our vision. It tells us lies. You're not good enough. You will fail. You will be alone. These are not truths. They are echoes, remnants of voices that were never ours to begin with. To go beyond fear is not to be fearless. It is to become intimate with fear, to sit with it, to listen, and to understand. Only then can we transmute it. This is the alchemy of awakening. In the words of Joseph Campbell, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." Every person who has ever transformed their life has walked through that cave. Every spiritual awakening, every creative breakthrough, every act of love over fear. It all begins with that first courageous step. And now, it is your turn. Do not wait until you are ready. Fear will never let you be ready. Begin now. Begin trembling if you must, but begin. You were not born to live in the echo of your own silence. You were born to sing, to speak, to soar. Let fear be your compass. Let it point you to where you are still bound, And then walk there, not to be fearless, but to be free. There comes a moment, sometimes sudden, sometimes gradual, when the world you've known no longer fits. The roles you've played feel hollow, the goals you once chased seem empty, and you feel a quiet whisper rising from within. There is more. This is the beginning of awakening. It is not glamorous. It is not always joyful. Often it begins with pain, the pain of misalignment, of disconnection, of a life that no longer reflects your truth. But in that pain is a seed, and when watered with awareness, it begins to grow. The mystic Eckhart Tolle speaks of the pain body, the accumulated emotional pain that lives within us. Awakening begins when we stop identifying with that pain, when we recognize that we are not the storm, we are the sky. You are not your thoughts, you are not your fears, you are the awareness behind them. And this awareness is vast. When you begin to awaken, you start to see through the illusion of control, the illusion of permanence, the illusion of separation. You realize that the self you thought you were, the identity built from memory, labels, achievements, is just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath it lies something timeless. In Hindu philosophy, this is called the Atman, the true self, the spark of the divine that lives in each of us. Carl Rogers, the great humanistic psychologist, believed that when a person feels deeply accepted and understood, they naturally move toward growth, toward becoming more real, more whole. Awakening is not an escape, it is a return to presence, to simplicity, to love. You begin to notice beauty in small things, the way light falls through the window, the sound of your own breath, the stillness between thoughts. This is not a regression, it is a remembering that you are not here to perform. You are here to experience, and the more you strip away what is false, the more what is real begins to shine. You do not need to add anything to become whole. You need only to remove what is not you. This is the paradox. The path to becoming is a path of unbecoming. Unbecoming the masks, unbecoming the fear, unbecoming the need to be anything other than who you already are. And in that surrender, you awaken. We live in a world filled with noise, voices telling us who to be, what to want, how to live. Algorithms curate our desires, advertisements define our dreams, even our own thoughts echo with borrowed beliefs. But beneath all this noise, there is a voice, quiet, steady, true. This is the inner voice, the voice of the soul, the intuition, the inner guide. It doesn't shout, it doesn't beg for attention, it waits patiently. It speaks in moments of stillness, in the hush before sleep, in the pause between breaths. It comes not from the mind, but from the heart. Ralph Waldo Emerson once wrote, "Trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string. To live a life of truth is to learn to hear that string, and then to follow it." But this is not easy, because the inner voice often speaks what the world doesn't want to hear. It calls you away from the crowd, away from the shoulds, into the vast and sometimes lonely space of authenticity. It will not always lead to comfort, but it will always lead to alignment. Albert Einstein spoke of the intuitive mind as a sacred gift. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. Reclaiming that gift begins with silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence of stillness. This is why mystics retreated to caves, why monks wake before dawn, why great thinkers and artists walk alone in nature. They are listening. You do not need to escape your life to hear your voice, but you do need to slow down, to put down the phone, to close the laptop, to sit, even for a few minutes, and simply be. And when the voice comes, it may not speak in words. It may come as a sensation, a knowing, a pull in your chest. Follow it, even if it makes no sense, especially if it makes no sense, because your soul knows the way home. And if you begin to trust it, moment by moment, step by step, you will build a life that no longer needs validation, because it will be your own. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that something else is more important than fear. It is not reserved for heroes or saints. Courage lives in quiet choices, in honest conversations, in the trembling step into the unknown. Nelson Mandela said, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. To live with courage is to live fully, to risk, to love, to try. Every time you speak your truth, even when your voice shakes, that is courage. Every time you choose love over judgment, compassion over anger, that is courage. Courage asks us to grow beyond the comfort zone, to stretch, to evolve. The comfort zone is safe, but it is also small. Life, real life, begins at the edge. When we step into the unknown, we meet parts of ourselves we didn't know existed. Strength, grace, faith, and courage grows with use. Like a muscle, it strengthens when exercised. Start small. Say what you mean. Ask for what you need. Say no when something violates your truth. Each act of courage becomes a seed, and over time, those seeds grow into a forest of confidence, resilience, freedom. To be courageous is to live with integrity, to align your outer life with your inner truth. And this alignment is magnetic. It draws the right people, the right opportunities, the right path. You don't need to see the whole road. You need only to take the next brave step, and then the next, and the next, until one day you look back and realize you have become the person you once only dreamed of. And it all began with courage. We are born into a world of mirrors, and early on we learn to wear a mask, not to deceive, but to belong. We shape ourselves to fit the expectations around us, constructing a persona that wins approval, applause, and love. But this mask, as Carl Jung said, is only a part of us, not a lie, but not the truth. Behind it waits the self, raw, divine, untamed. The poet Gibran reminds us, pain is the cracking of the shell that encloses understanding. And so, life breaks us open, not to destroy, but to reveal. In those moments when the roles no longer fit, when the applause fades, we are invited to meet who we truly are. Not as a brand, not as a curated identity, but as a soul. The soul doesn't crave followers, it craves truth. It longs to be seen, not through filters, but through presence. And so begins the sacred unmasking, not once, but over and over again. A shedding, a remembering, a courageous returning. Each truth spoken, each tear not hidden, each moment of realness is a doorway back to ourselves. Back to wholeness, not perfection, but presence. Because vulnerability is not weakness. It is the birthplace of connection, creativity, and healing. We are not roles walking alone. We are souls walking each other home. And home is not found in pretending. It is found in presence. You are not broken, only buried. And now, layer by layer, mask by mask, you are remembering. You are not here to impress. You are here to express. You are not here to be flawless. You are here to be real. Struggle, a word so often feared, misunderstood, avoided. But what if struggle is not the enemy? What if it is the sacred invitation? There is a rhythm in life, a divine choreography between chaos and clarity, tension and release, silence and revelation. And struggle is the drumbeat that calls us into the dance. In ancient spiritual traditions, suffering was never meaningless. The Sufis spoke of dying before death, a symbolic letting go of false identities, attachments, and illusions. To suffer consciously was to be purified, To be broken was to become open. In Christianity, the desert was not a place of exile, but transformation. Even Christ wandered there, alone, fasting, stripped of distraction, and emerged renewed. In Buddhism, the first noble truth is direct. Life involves suffering, not as punishment but as a portal. Dukkha, as it's called, is not the end, it's the beginning of liberation. And in modern psychology, Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the Holocaust, wrote, "In some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning." Meaning. This is what transforms struggle from weight to wisdom. Yet in our modern world, we're taught to avoid pain at all costs. Numb it, ignore it, escape it, buy something, post something, distract yourself. But the soul doesn't evolve through avoidance. It evolves through presence. The deepest growth often comes disguised as breakdown. When your plans collapse, when your heart breaks, when your identity dissolves. And it hurts. It should hurt. Because something old is dying and something new is being born. Pain is the midwife of transformation. Do not rush to fix it. Do not label it too quickly. Sit with it. Let it speak. Ask, what is this trying to teach me? Because struggle is never random. It's the soul's way of getting your attention. Carl Jung wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. We awaken not through perfection, but through friction. It is the discomfort that sharpens us. It is the resistance that forges resilience. Even in nature, this truth holds. The pearl is formed by irritation, the diamond through pressure. The lotus blooms in mud. So too do you. When your world feels like it's falling apart, ask yourself, what part of me is being invited to rise? Because struggle strips away what is false. The masks, the roles, the noise. It humbles the ego. It deepens compassion. It breaks the shell so that something infinite can emerge. This is sacred work. But sacred doesn't mean easy. It means meaningful. There is a reason the caterpillar must dissolve to become the butterfly. Metamorphosis requires the death of the old self. And yet, that death is not the end. It's the doorway. If you are struggling now, good. It means you are on the threshold of becoming. Let it be holy. Let it be messy. Let it be real. Do not compare your process to anyone else's. The soul doesn't run on algorithms. It unfolds in divine time. You may be tempted to rush, to numb, to pretend you're fine. But instead, slow down, feel, breathe, and remember, you are not broken. You are breaking open. This moment, yes, this one, could be the very fire that refines you, the night that leads to dawn, the fall that gives you wings. You are not being punished. You are being initiated. This is the sacred struggle. And on the other side of it is not just a better version of you. It is the real you. The you who has walked through fire and found gold in the ashes. The you who now carries wisdom, compassion, and the kind of strength no comfort zone could ever offer. So when the storm come, and it will, don't hide. Bow, welcome it, and whisper, I am ready to rise. There comes a time in every life, quiet but unmistakable, when the universe pauses and leans in close to ask, are you ready? This question never arrives in the language of logic. It comes in whispers, dreams, discomfort, serendipity, a book falling open to the right page, a conversation that echoes your unspoken thoughts, a sudden feeling that the life you've built no longer fits the shape of your soul. And in that pause, in that sacred stillness, your only true answer can be one of two things, yes or no. Not maybe, not later, not I'll think about it. Because your soul already knows. It has known all along. The sacred yes is not just an answer. It is a door that appears only when you are ready to walk through it, even if you do not feel ready, especially when you do not feel ready. To say yes is not to understand everything. It is not to have all the answers, or even to know the next step. It is simply to agree to begin. To say yes is to open your heart to the path that calls you, the one that feels both terrifying and true, the one that demands everything false be stripped away. It is the yes of surrender, not to defeat, but to truth. This surrender is sacred because it breaks the illusion that you are separate from the life you long to live. It collapses the distance between who you are and who you're becoming. But this yes is not easy. It will require the death of what is comfortable. It will ask you to walk through fire, not to burn, but to purify. It is the death of the mask you wore to survive, the death of the expectations you inherited but never chose, the death of the version of you who thought safety was more valuable than authenticity. Saying yes does not mean your fear disappears. It means you no longer let fear drive the car. You feel the fear, and you move anyway. You hear the doubt, and you listen deeper. You sense the risk, and still, you step forward. This is not recklessness. This is alignment. The sacred yes is the compass of the soul. It points not north, but inward, to the place where your truth resides, waiting to be honored. Sometimes that yes is small, a quiet no to gossip, a firm boundary in a conversation, a choice to rest instead of produce. Other times it is thunder, leaving the relationship, changing the job, starting the dream, standing alone in your truth. Every sacred yes alters your trajectory. Every yes plants a seed that blooms in divine timing. But the world will not always applaud your yes. In fact, many will not understand it. They may call it selfish, impractical, irrational. They may say you've changed. They may try to pull you back into the familiar patterns that your yes is trying to free you from. Do not be alarmed. When you say yes to what is real, you say no to what is false, and the false will often resist. This is not a sign that you are wrong. It is a sign that you are awakening. Every mystic has felt this. The ache of being misunderstood, the sting of shedding identities that once brought belonging. But they chose the yes anyway. Not because it was easy, but because it was true. And truth is not a luxury, it is a lifeline. The sacred yes reconnects you to life itself. It is the bridge between soul and skin, between the eternal and the everyday. In saying yes, you become a participant in the unfolding of creation. You stop fighting the current of life and begin to flow with it. You stop asking life to shrink, and instead, you expand. You become not a victim of the unknown, but an ally of it. This yes is an act of co-creation, the moment you stop reacting and start responding. The moment you stop grasping and start trusting. It is the rebirth of faith, not faith in some distant deity, but faith in the sacred intelligence that pulses through you. The same intelligence that breathes the trees and spins the stars has been whispering to you since before you were born. You are not here to play small. You are not here to fit in. You are here to become. And the path of becoming always begins with yes. Yes to your intuition. Yes to your wild longing. Yes to the silence between thoughts. Yes to the life that keeps knocking at your door. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are on the brink. And the yes, the sacred yes, is the bridge. It is the moment you walk out of the waiting room of your own life and into the unknown, where everything real begins. The sacred yes is not loud, but it is powerful. It doesn't shout, it sings, it hums in your chest, it glows in your gut, it dances in your dreams. And once you say it, truly say it, the universe moves. Doors open, synchronicities multiply, the right people appear, the right challenges arrive, not because life has changed, but because you have. You become magnetic to truth, magnetic to growth, magnetic to grace. And grace, dear soul, is the language of those who say yes. So let yourself stand at the edge, let yourself tremble, Let yourself not know, but say it anyway. Say yes. Say yes to the call, yes to the fear, yes to the mystery, yes to the fire that does not burn, but reveals. And in that yes, you will find what you were never truly missing. You will find yourself. There is a compass hidden in the soul of every human being, not forged of iron or guided by magnetic north, but shaped by stillness, carved from silence, and illuminated by something far more ancient than reason. It is your inner guide, a voice that is not a voice, a presence that cannot be seen but is always felt, a knowing that does not arise from logic, but from a deeper dimension of being. This guide has no interest in whether your decisions make sense to others. It does not consult popular opinion. It does not panic in the face of uncertainty, nor tremble before the chaos of change. It is not loud, but it is powerful. It is not fast, but it is true. And when all other voices fade, it remains. In the early years of life, this guide is bold. Children do not question whether their joy is valid. They do not ask permission to be curious, to play, to express, to explore. They follow an inner rhythm, instinctual, free, unashamed. They dance when the music moves them, laugh when something is funny, cry when they are hurt. Their inner guide is untouched by the world's conditioning. But slowly, as expectations are imposed, as systems of approval and punishment are introduced, the child begins to doubt. Don't say that. Act like this. Good girls don't do that. Strong boys don't cry. Be realistic. Fit in. The inner guide becomes muted, buried beneath layers of survival and social adaptation. You begin to consult everything outside of yourself. Parents, teachers, media, rules, gods, algorithms. And while there is wisdom in learning from others, the danger is in replacing your own authority with theirs. You become a mirror, reflecting expectations instead of radiating truth. But the guide never leaves. It waits, patiently, quietly. It speaks in the spaces between distraction, in the pause between breaths, in the silence after a storm of thoughts, in the emptiness that feels strangely full. It does not need your perfection. It only asks for your presence. When you are finally still enough, broken enough, or exhausted enough from chasing what never felt right, the guide stirs. It may speak as a gentle nudge. This isn't for you. It may arrive as discomfort, a twisting in your stomach when you say yes but mean no. It may speak in dreams, symbols rising from the depths, repeating themes you cannot ignore. Sometimes it is joy, that deep, calm joy that arises when you imagine living differently. Sometimes it is grief, the grief of knowing you've abandoned yourself for too long. Sometimes it is rage, sacred, burning rage that says, enough, no more. The inner guide does not argue, it does not beg to be heard, but it will never lie to you. And the longer you ignore it, the more discomfort you feel, because to betray the guide is to fracture yourself, to live according to false maps, chasing someone else's idea of success, love, worth. You can dress it up in logic. You can justify it with credentials. You can surround yourself with applause, but inside, you'll know that something is off, that something in you is shrinking, because the inner guide always demands one thing: integrity, not morality, but wholeness. A life where your thoughts, emotions, values, and actions are in harmony. A life not borrowed or copied, but carved, step by step, from the bedrock of your own being. To hear the guide again, you must become still, still enough to feel, still enough to listen, still enough to turn inward and ask, what is true for me? Not what is easy, not what is safe, not what will make them happy, but what is true. And when you ask from that depth, you must prepare to be surprised, because the guide does not always take you toward comfort. It takes you toward truth. It may ask you to walk away from what no longer nourishes you, even if it's all you've ever known. It may ask you to stop performing, stop people-pleasing, stop explaining yourself. It may ask you to risk failure, to risk loneliness, to risk misunderstanding. It may ask you to trust yourself more than you trust the systems you've been raised in. And that is terrifying, but also liberating. Because the guide doesn't just lead you away from falsehood, it leads you home. You know you're listening to your inner guide when you feel a quiet certainty, even in the face of doubt. You are no longer looking for approval, just alignment. You are willing to disappoint others in order to remain honest with yourself. You feel fear, but walk forward anyway because something deeper than fear is pulling you. The guide never offers a full map, just the next step. It doesn't flood you with answers. It gives you the right question. It doesn't promise the outcome. It reminds you of the essence. It doesn't guarantee safety, but it grants you meaning, and that is a form of sacred shelter. So if you feel lost, you are not broken. You are not behind. You have simply wandered too far from your own voice. You've been listening to the world's noise for too long. Now it's time to return. To walk slowly, to sit in silence, to stop chasing and start listening, to feel, to remember. You are not here to be a copy. You are not here to perform obedience. You are here to be real. And the only way to be real is to follow the thread of truth that lives within you. It will not always be easy, but it will always be right. Because your inner guide is not just a voice. It is the echo of your soul's original agreement, the reason you came. The map written before you had words, the flame that never went out. You are not alone. You are not adrift. You are not irreparably lost. The way back is through listening. There comes a moment in every life when the surface no longer satisfies, when the laughter feels hollow, when the routine becomes a slow suffocation, when the mask you wear begins to crack, and the light from within starts leaking out. This is the beginning of the call. It rarely arrives in grandeur, not with trumpets nor lightning, not with divine prophecy carved in stone. No, it comes softly, insistently, like a trembling in your chest, like a question at 3 a.m. that won't leave you alone. Is this really it? You may try to ignore it, silence it with achievement, drown it in distraction, in scrolling, in schedules, in noise. But the soul is patient. It waits and waits and waits until you are weary enough, quiet enough, empty enough to finally hear it again. And when you do, something ancient awakens. This is the threshold, the holy place between what was and what will be. It is not an easy place. It is the desert after Egypt, but before the promised land. It is the belly of the whale. It is the moment the cocoon cracks, but the wings are not yet formed. It is Jonah in the deep, Christ in the garden, Siddhartha beneath the tree. It is you now, standing in the aching space where certainty dissolves, and only the unknown remains. And this unknown, it terrifies the ego, it rattles the intellect, it strips you of who you thought you were. Because what lies beyond the threshold is not a better version of your old self. It is an entirely new way of being. Here's the paradox. We long for this transformation, but we fear the cost. To be reborn, something must die. An identity, a worldview, a belief system you clung to like a raft in the storm. You cannot carry the old self into the new world. The mask must fall. The armor must be left behind. The justifications, the excuses, the performance, all of it must burn. And so, at the threshold, you stand naked, stripped of the stories that kept you comfortable, but also stripped of the weight that kept you small. And now, the voices begin. The old guardians of the ego. They say, "This is foolish. Go back. You're being dramatic. There's nothing wrong with your life. Other people have it worse. Who are you to seek something more?" These are not your enemies. These voices are parts of you, afraid. They were built to protect you. They helped you survive. They kept you inside the fence, away from the wolves. But what they don't understand is that the wolf is no longer outside you. The real danger now is the quiet death of a life unlived. To stand at the threshold is to feel everything all at once. Grief for the person you used to be, longing for the person you could become, terror at the thought of losing control, hope that just maybe there is something real on the other side. And in that swirl of emotion, something miraculous can happen. Clarity. Not the clarity of answers, but the clarity of knowing what can no longer be ignored. The truth is simple. You cannot unhear the call. You cannot unsee the cracks in the illusion. You cannot pretend to be asleep once the soul has opened its eyes. You are already on the path. The question is not whether you will cross the threshold. You already have. The question is whether you will walk it consciously or fight it until life forces your hands open. Because this transition will come by grace or by grief, by invitation or by crisis, by gentle whisper or by violent upheaval. The sacred doesn't care how comfortable you are. It only cares how awake you are. To walk this path is not to escape pain, but to be initiated by it. You will be asked to sit in silence when everything in you wants to run. You will be asked to forgive when vengeance feels justified. You will be asked to trust, not in the outcome, but in the process itself. And through it all, the sacred threshold is shaping you, breaking you open, not to destroy you, but to pour the divine into the cracks. You do not need to understand everything right now. You only need to say yes. A trembling, holy yes. A yes that means, I am ready to live the truth, even if it costs me the life I built on lies. And as you say yes, something shifts. You realize you are not alone. Others have walked this path. The mystics, the poets, the revolutionaries, the healers, they too stood here, barefoot on the edge of the unknown. They too wept. They too doubted. They too longed to turn back. But they didn't, and neither will you, because the voice calling you forward is not separate from you. It is you, the truest part of you, the eternal self, finally rising to the surface. The self that remembers what the world made you forget, that you were never meant to live a half-life, that you were never meant to settle for survival, that you were born not to conform, but to transform. So now, take a breath. Feel the threshold beneath your feet. Feel the weight of your old name sliding off your shoulders. Feel the quiet pulse of your real self awakening. You will not have all the answers, but you will have the strength and the courage and the grace to keep walking, one sacred, surrendered step at a time. Because what lies ahead is not a destination. It is the beginning of a deeper life. There are two sacred teachers in life. They do not wear robes. They do not speak with words. They appear when all else has failed to awaken you. Their names are fire and silence. Fire arrives first, loud, chaotic, undeniable. It does not knock. It tears the door off its hinges. Silence arrives later, soft, invisible, vast. It doesn't enter. It simply is, waiting for you to notice it. And both, though opposite in expression, are allies in your awakening. Fire is the moment your illusions collapse. It's not poetic. It's raw. It doesn't feel like growth. It feels like grief. It comes as betrayal, as heartbreak, as loss, as illness, as humiliation, as the shattering realization that the life you built was never truly yours. And yet, this pain is not random. Fire is not cruelty. It is surgery. It cuts away everything false, everything borrowed, everything built to survive, not to live. It burns your masks. It melts your defenses. It dismantles the narrative you've spent years maintaining. You scream, "Why is this happening to me?" And fire replies, "To reveal who you are without the lies." You see, the ego believes safety lies in control, but the soul knows safety lies in truth. And truth is never found in the comfortable. So fire comes not to punish, but to purify, to reduce you to the raw material of your being, to return you not to what you want to be, but to what you were born to be. Every fire in your life was holy, even the ones you cursed, even the ones you swore you'd never survive, especially those. Because when you are reduced to ash, something miraculous happens. You discover that the flame could only touch what was temporary. The eternal within you remained untouched. Then, once the fire has finished its work, silence comes. It does not announce itself. It doesn't demand your attention. It arrives like a breath after sobbing, like still water after a storm. And this is where most people panic, because silence is confronting. In silence, there are no distractions, no performances, no noise to shield you from your inner world, just you and your truth. But what at first feels like a void is actually a womb, a sacred place of becoming. Silence is not absence. It is presence in its purest form. It's in the quiet where you finally hear your soul speak. Not in sentences, but in sensations. Not in answers, but in knowing. Not in logic, but in clarity that defies language. And slowly, gently, it reveals, you are not your pain. You are not your story. You are not your performance. You are the space that holds all of it, and yet is untouched by any of it. This is where you start to remember what the fire was always trying to show you. You are not becoming something. You are unbecoming everything that isn't you. Once you've walked through both, the fire and the silence, a sacred rhythm emerges. You see life not as a line, but as a spiral. You return to the same places, but with deeper eyes. You begin to understand. Fire is not a crisis, it's an initiation. Silence is not emptiness, it's integration. Pain is not punishment, it's purification. Stillness is not stagnation, it's sacred gestation. The world teaches you to run from discomfort, to sedate the fire, to fill the silence. But awakening teaches you to stay, to let the fire refine you, to let the silence define you. Because when you stop resisting, you realize everything you feared was healing in disguise. What is born from this path? Not perfection, not bliss, not certainty, but something far greater, wholeness. You begin to walk the world unguarded, not because you trust everyone, but because you trust yourself. You no longer perform, you embody. You no longer seek permission, you exist freely. You no longer chase the light. You become the light, forged in fire, anchored in silence. You no longer look for God in books, in temples, in gurus. You find God in your breath, in your breakdown, in your becoming. And so, when the next fire comes, and it will, you will not curse it. You will breathe into it. Because you know it's not here to destroy you, it's here to burn away what you no longer need. And when silence follows, as it always does, you will not run from it, you will bow to it. Because now you understand. It's not here to isolate you, it's here to bring you home. You are no longer afraid of fire, you are no longer afraid of silence, because you are both. You are the flame that awakens, you are the stillness that holds. You are the alchemy. And this is your path now, to live on the edge of transformation, to hold the fire without flinching, to sit in the silence without escaping, to become the space where healing is not a destination, but a way of being. Fire and silence, destruction and rebirth, noise and stillness, wound and wonder. This is the rhythm of the awakened soul, and you, dear one, are learning to dance in it. There comes a time in the life of every seeker when the search itself begins to dissolve, not because you've found all the answers, but because you've stopped asking the wrong questions. You no longer seek the path, you become the walker. You no longer ask, where is my power? You begin to live as though you've always had it. This is the moment you become a quiet sovereign, not a ruler over others, but a sovereign over yourself. Your mind, your emotions, your reactions, your energy, your choices. You no longer outsource authority to the world. You bring it back home. What is sovereignty? Sovereignty is not loud. It doesn't need to prove, convince, or defend. Sovereignty is quiet because it is rooted in something deeper than validation, inner truth. It is the state in which you no longer beg the world to make you feel worthy. You no longer shapeshift for acceptance. You no longer betray yourself to be understood. You've burned through enough of the false. You've sat in enough silence. You've died to enough versions of yourself to now say, "This is who I am, not because I decided it, but because I remembered it." The still presence. A sovereign is not reactive. They are responsive. They do not rush to speak. They listen first, not just to others, but to the deeper wisdom underneath every moment. They do not force life. They cooperate with it. Like a tree rooted in centuries of storms, they are not shaken by every wind. They bend but do not break. They feel but do not drown. They love but do not lose themselves. You may walk past them and not notice them at all, but step into their field, and something in you calms, not because they project strength, but because they exude peace. This is the radiance of true inner power. It doesn't dominate, it liberates. Detachment without disconnection. To be sovereign is to be deeply in the world, yet not of it. You participate in life, but you are no longer possessed by it. You feel pain, but it doesn't become your identity. You feel joy, but you don't cling to it. You walk through chaos, but you no longer collapse under it. This is the paradox of sovereignty. You care deeply, but you are no longer controlled. You love fully, but your cup overflows from within. It is no longer desperate for filling. You show up in the world, not needing approval, but offering presence. You act, not from fear or obligation, but from alignment with your inner knowing. You are not numb, you are free. Boundaries. As sacred architecture. A sovereign has boundaries, not walls. Walls keep the world out. Boundaries invite only what is aligned in. You no longer feel guilt for saying no. You no longer over-explain your choices. You no longer shrink to avoid judgment, because you finally understand every no rooted in truth is a yes to your wholeness. Your boundaries are not punishments, they are prayers. They say, "I honor myself. I am not available for anything that dishonors my peace. I will not contort to keep what's not meant to stay." And in this clarity your relationships shift. Some leave, some stay, some deepen, but you remain whole. The inner court. The sovereign learns to consult a different court, not the opinions of the crowd, not the noise of the news, not the chaos of social expectation. They consult the inner court, the breath, the gut, the heart, the still small voice that whispers in meditation, in nature, in solitude. This voice does not scream. It guides. It doesn't flatter your ego. It humbles you into alignment. It doesn't always say what's easy. It says what's true. And once you learn to listen to this voice, you will never again need a guru, a savior, or an audience to tell you who you are. The return of innocence. Ironically, the more sovereign you become, the more childlike you become. Not naive, but innocent in the purest sense. You laugh easily, you cry freely, you marvel at the sky again, you play, you rest, you trust the unfolding of things, you return to the essence that was never lost, only buried under years of pretending. This is the full circle. You sought power and found peace. You sought success and found simplicity. You sought answers and found wonder. You do not need to impress. You do not need to escape. You do not need to be anyone but who you are in this breath, because finally, you are no longer performing life. You are living it. The throne within. And so you take your place, not above anyone, not beneath anyone, but within yourself. You no longer chase the throne outside. You realize you've always been sitting on the throne within. And it is here in this quiet sovereignty that the world begins to change, not because you forced it to, but because your very presence is a portal, a mirror, a light, a remembrance of what is possible. You don't lead with dominance. You lead by example. You lead by embodiment. You lead by being. You are not just awake. You are aligned. You are not just conscious. You are crowned. You are not just healed. You are whole. This is the quiet revolution. This is the birth of a sovereign soul. And this is just the beginning. There is a moment in every journey where the path circles back, not to where you began, but to who you were, before the world told you who to be. This is the sacred return, not a retreat into the past, but a homecoming to the present, to the presence, to the one who has always been quietly waiting beneath every mask, behind every fear, beyond every striving, the true you. The mystics call it the beloved, the self, the divine within, not something to chase, something to remember. You have climbed through fear. You have shed false selves. You have walked through fire, silence, darkness, not to become someone new, but to unveil what was always sacred. This is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of your life as one who remembers. You no longer need to fight for your worth. It is your birthright. You no longer need to prove your place. You are part of the whole. You no longer need to run. You have arrived. And from this place of grounded presence, something subtle yet immense begins to emerge. Peace. Not the peace of escape, but the peace of alignment, of knowing. You walk the world not as someone seeking light, but as someone radiating it. You speak not to be heard, but because truth moves through you like breath. You listen not to respond, but to connect. You create not to impress, but to bless. This is the quiet power of the awakened soul. You are no longer at war with yourself, no longer caught in the storm of becoming. You have discovered the still point within the turning world, and you can return to it again and again with every breath. The sages say that enlightenment is like ordinary life, but with nothing left to hold on to, nothing left to fear, nothing left to protect. Just this moment, this presence, this love. So now, live. Not as the seeker, but as the found. Not as the question, but as the answer that breathes. Not as the dreamer, but as the dream awakened. And when fear whispers again, as it will, greet it like an old friend. Smile, bow. Thank it for showing you where you're still growing. Then keep walking, softly, powerfully, truly. You are no longer becoming, you are being, and that is more than enough. Epilogue, the echo of the flame. Long after the fire has faded, the warmth remains. Long after the words have ended, the silence speaks. Long after the journey is walked, the path walks within you. What began as a search for courage led you not into battle, but into surrender. Not into noise, but into truth. Not into becoming someone else, but unbecoming everything you are not. And now you carry something subtle, invisible, and immeasurable, a flame, not one that burns for attention, but one that glows quietly from within, lighting your life from the inside out. You may forget this at times. Life will rush in. Fear will dress up in new costumes. Old doubts may return like ghosts, but you will remember. Because once you've touched truth, even for a moment, you can never truly go back. The seed has been planted, the bell has been rung, and even in your forgetting, something inside you will keep whispering, "Come home, you are already whole." So live simply, love deeply, speak truth, even when your voice trembles. Choose presence over performance, choose stillness over noise. Choose love, again and again, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And when your time comes to leave this world, let it be said, not that you played it safe, not that you fit in, but that you lived, that you remembered, that you dared to awaken in a sleeping world and shone like a quiet star in the night sky, refusing to be anything but yourself. Because in the end, that was always the point. Not to escape fear, but to walk with it, to see through it, and to become love, not despite it, but because of it.